please help me to welcome our panelists for online education during times of crisis, challenges of teaching during COVID-19. Our first presenters are Inés Lozano Palacio and María Asunción Barreras, and they are presenting from Spain. They both are affiliated with the University of La Rioja, and their research interests are cognitive linguistics, didactics, literary theory, and experience directing and participating in teaching innovation with a project that they're going to talk to us about today called Corona Ninjas. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and let Inés and Maria begin their presentation. Thank you.
The talk is based on the didactic project we carried out once the lockdown took place in our country, Spain, and how we have to change our in-class into online teaching. The layout is as follows. We're going to explain the origins and context of our project, Corona Ninjas. Then we're going to give account of the cognitive theoretical framework of the project, as well as the methods and tools used in order to carry it out. In addition, we're going to explain the process of creating this project. We're going to describe the dissemination and outreach of the Corona Ninjas. We're going to interpret the project results. And finally, we're going to reach a number of conclusions. On the following slide, here we've got some information. Spain was one of the first countries in Europe to be affected by coronavirus. Suddenly, the state of emergency was declared on the 13th of March. Schools, universities were closed. That meant 2 months of confinement. Both teachers and students were forced to adapt to a type of education we had not implemented before, online education. In our case, we give classes in the subject of didactic of foreign languages, which is part of the undergraduate degree in primary education teaching at the University of La Rioja. Consequently, our students have a great interest in teaching English to young children in primary school. Since the lockdown, we gave online classes, but we also knew that the new situation demanded new didactic resources to keep on teaching. As well, we thought of giving a practical perspective to the subject, so we thought of the need to involve primary school children in the fight against COVID. We pursued the double objective of making them practice while interiorizing some tips to prevent the spread of COVID-19, such as washing your hands, staying home, or doing some physical activity. Taking into account all the skills and knowledge our universitarian students could learn in our subject, they were posed the didactic challenge of elaborating materials to face the pandemic situation. And the result is the webpage of Corona Ninjas UR. As you can see, the Corona Ninjas project is structured around the figure of the ninja, a disciplined warrior open to learning and whose intelligence in training leads him to peace of mind and effective fighting. The student willing to become a Corona Ninja must embody those traits and through learning the English language acquire knowledge about COVID-19 in order to defeat the virus. This is based on the publication in 1980 of the monographic Metaphors We Live By Lakoff and Johnson. They claim that metaphor is essentially a matter of ordinary everyday thought rather than just a literary device. They postulate that metaphor is highly pervasive in human reasoning and as a consequence in language. This is so because of its nature as a central cognitive process. As such, metaphor consists in mapping, putting into correspondence a structure from 2 discrete conceptual domains, one of which called the source is used to reason and talk about the other called the target. The source domain is often grounded in everyday experience, whereas the target domain occurs in any degree of abstraction. Expressions such as they are in an ended relationship, or this relationship is going anywhere are examples of the metaphor love is a journey, which exploits the idea that love relationships are purposeful activities that can be understood in terms of a traveler's goals reaching a destination. The same happens with the metaphor more is up. Imagine a container with fluid. The more fluid filled in the container, the higher the level of fluid will rise. Logically, less fluid results in a lower level. In other words, the level of fluid goes up with more and down with less fluid. So the examples, prices are going up lately, or they have to pay high taxes, or rocketing prices of oil makes it more difficult, are metaphorical linguistic expressions of this metaphor. Another example is the conceptualization of disease as a fight. A clear example of this metaphor can be found in the media discourse against certain disease, where it is very common to hear expressions such as the patient struggles with leukemia or we must be prepared to fight cancer. These premises can be applied to didactics and to allow students to identify with certain characters and thus promote their learning motivation. In this case, we have used the figure of the ninja as the ideal of discipline to which a student should aspire, and we have conceptualized the virus as the enemy. We thought that the best method to carry out this project was PBL. Project-based learning is defined as a systematic teaching method that engages students in learning knowledge and skills through an extended inquiry process structured around complex, authentic questions and carefully designed products and tasks. In the context of confinement and of online classes, the situation had changed. Inés and me thought that the Corona Ninjas UR project was student-driven and realistic. The driving question we asked was, under these circumstances, can you be useful to society and help children to learn and practice English while interiorizing how to fight against the COVID-19? We considered that this project was central to the curriculum, focused on problems that could drive the students to a struggle with major concepts and could involve them in a constructivist investigation in a very motivating way. Working in groups, they had to investigate, they had to read, they had to analyze facts, they had to choose materials, activities, skills to develop, they had to evaluate possible solutions and use meaningful learning. The Corona Ninjas project gave them opportunities to guide, manage, and monitor their learning through self-direction and self-regulation. They didn't just have to repeat information, they have to interpret the information, and they have to work collaboratively. Moreover, day by day, all of us found out that there was a very good public acceptance of this project in society. Both parents and children became users of the material and activities provided in the Corona Ninjas webpage. So our universitarian students were really motivated to learn, to analyze critically, and to work collaboratively. In the webpage of Corona Ninjas, our students proposed different, mostly video activities in English, where the primary school children can reinforce their knowledge of English while learning not only preventive measures against COVID-19, but also ninja recipes, ninja games, ninja songs, and other activities that empower them to take an active part in contributing to their families' welfare and the prevention of the virus. These activities not only cover academic needs, English vocabulary and grammar, arts, music, geography, but also physical needs, such as exercising. Taking into account the information assimilated in class, the readings and their discussions, our students design new activities periodically and according to the different stages of the pandemic and the COVID measures implemented. For example, at the beginning, the objective related to the coronavirus was to maintain the distance or to wash their hands. However, with the passing of time and taking into account that In Spain, children were not allowed outside their homes. The objective was to make them practice some exercise and eat healthy food to prevent obesity. This allowed children learn vocabulary and expressions related to different contexts, those of our heroes, doctors and nurses in the hospitals, cashiers and packers in the supermarket, or street sweepers doing their job. Moreover, all activities are labeled with a level, little, medium, master ninja, so that both students and parents can choose the activities that are most suitable for each student. And as you can see, children can get a certificate of good Corona Ninja. In the following slide, well, the main tools used with this subject are Blackboard, Collaborate Ultra, and WordPress. Blackboard Collaborate Ultra powers our online teaching. It provides opportunities to meet our learners where they are. As well, it gives students and teachers different ways to collaborate with video telephony, wikis, blogs, which are very easy to use. WordPress is one of the most popular content management solutions in use. In our case, it has become paramount to make this project known to society. On the following slide, you can appreciate the most used tools by our students and their importance according to the table ranking of the top tools for learning 2020. We have already given examples of the activities proposed. Some of them are based on the development of the written skills in English, so you find activities with reading comprehension or filling gaps. However, our students proposed mostly video activities. On the following slide, you can appreciate the tools that our students have mainly made use of. Filmora, Viva Video, or Movie Maker are programs with essential tools to edit videos very easily. Of course, YouTube allowed us to upload, view, share the videos, and we were very surprised to find so many Steven Spielbergs in our class.
Well, I'm going to be talking a little bit about how we created the Corona Ninjas project. The steps that you can see on the slides are the steps that we took in order to turn what was just an idea into a reality. We first started by simulating the pandemic situation as primary school teachers. This we thought was very important, and in fact, we came up with this idea even before lockdown was enforced. We knew about the virus, and we knew it was causing a lot of, trouble in other countries, and the fact that it was in Italy already made us very, very suspicious about how fast it was going to get to our country. And so, as teachers of didactics, we thought all students who will be teachers in the future should have the tools and the resources to face an unexpected situation where drastic measures have to be undertaken. The creation of the platform came after after we started creating the activities for the project. We wanted a space online that was democratic, that could be accessed by almost everyone. And since almost everybody in Spain has a telephone, we thought that even through the telephone, people could actually, parents and children could actually have access to this. After we created the WordPress platform, we elaborated the materials, and then we distributed the site in the relevant mailing lists and in the relevant venues. Among them, schools, high schools, schools that are specifically oriented toward helping children with difficulties, etc. And periodically, we elaborated new activities with our students according, as my colleague Asunción explained, the different stages of the pandemic and how those COVID measures were implemented. This is the cover page of Corona Ninjas. As you can see, the cover page features Corona Ninja songs, Corona Ninja games, and Corona Ninja surprises. On top, you can see we can easily access the training, which we call the ninja training step by step, together with on the right who we are, so that parents could look my colleague Asunción and myself up and link it to the university so that they knew those activities were framed within a context that was reliable, as well as where to find us. And then the methodology we had created, we had used to create the project, because there are ideas that are essential for parents to know in order to accept and apply the activities that we proposed. This is the website, this sort of the site of who we are, and the students who participated in the project, who obviously were key to this project becoming real. We were coordinators of this project, but the students' participation and their devotion to this project was just surprising and admirable, absolutely extraordinary. Again, how they could find us, they could contact us at all times with suggestions, comments, or any feedback about the activities, how their children were using those activities, and whether they had any special petition for us to upload. This is the methodology and the theoretical framework, and we explain all in a very in a language that was friendly to a general target audience. What were the principles guiding the construction of our project? Here, there's each of the steps, as you can see. Turn into a Corona Ninja, step 1. Preventive virus singing, step 2. All images that came from the field of the ninja sort of ninja culture and ninja atmosphere, and that was thanks to the help of our designer team at the University of La Rioja, who also did a wonderful job helping us tailor this project into something that was a lot more professional. As you can see, Asunción explained that each of the activities has a different level. See, on green, you can see it's little ninja, and here it's medium ninja. And depending on the color, you would get a different level of difficulty, which means that activities that were high level ninja, like master ninja, could only be done by students who had a higher level, but all the rest, well, little ninja by everybody, and medium ninja by students with an intermediate level. In terms of dissemination and outreach, we had the help of 2 main groups of institutions. One of them was we got access to through the Department of Education, and the other one through public and private primary schools and language schools. Here are some of the examples. These are the statistics of the Corona Ninjas site, of how the visit increased so much. We got over 20,000 visits of more than 41 countries. We participated in a European hackathon, and the results show that this project motivated the results to create new didactic resources, fostered the acquisition of content better than traditional methods, and provided us with a platform to put the course's theory into practice. So just a very brief message of hope. When Daniel Defoe published a Journal of the Plague in 1722, he tried to lay out the blueprint that future societies could follow when confronted with such dire circumstances, saying, "I have set this particular down so fully because I know not but it may may be a moment to those who come after me, if they come to be brought to the same distress. So when the coronavirus hit us, we tried to keep helping students, to make them develop, to guide them using proper information, and to develop new didactic and digital skills. Corona Ninjas had taught us the value of small actions and how helping thousands of children and their families academically and emotionally under these circumstances was definitely possible. Thank you.
I'll start off with a question for both of you. This is such a huge project, a big undertaking, and it's very impressive how much you got done in such a short period of time. You're teaching at the same time you're creating this, correct?
Yeah. As I have said at the beginning, we thought of the situation have changed. The context was different. We were not going to be in the classroom, so we have to change the way of motivating, of working on the theory. So we thought that, well, this project could be the core to make our students develop the contents of the and to understand the contents of the subject. So we gave them I don't know, the articles or units related to the different contents. I don't know how to work or the kind of activities they can develop, what kind of oral or how to explain or develop the oral skills, the written skills in the primary education. Taking into account the characteristics, the physical characteristics, the cognitive characteristics of children, how we can best teach them the English language. And as I say, we give them contents about all the didactic units of the subject, but everything was explained, everything was worked, taking into account this final object, which was the web page of Corona Ninjas. Inés, if you want to add anything else.
Well, I was going to say that it was actually very useful for us to be teaching the students, because the way we reorganized the course meant that we could follow the process of their creation of activities. So if they were doing anything that we didn't think was right, we could have time to discuss this with them. We did sessions for us to share ideas and to share methods of building these activities. It was extremely enriching, not only for us, but for them too, to work with us and in collaboration with the rest of the students. They really developed a sense of collective building and creation. I think that was extremely rich, especially these days. Mm-hmm. And education sometimes lacks that spirit.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the computer became a sort of window of communication.
Absolutely.
I think all of us were very involved in this, in the creation of the different activities and in learning and how to best, to think of better possibilities or better kind of activities for children. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This was open for students, not just in your classroom, but anywhere in the world, correct? And
the activities were created by our students, but once they were uploaded in the web page, any could have access to them.
So following up on the question from Barbara Lafford, she comments, I noticed many of your instructions are shown in Spanish. Did you provide any instructional prompts in English at various levels of proficiency to meet the needs of students at different language ability levels?
Inés, if you want to answer.
Sure. The reason, indeed, all the whole training was framed within a Spanish context. We wanted not only children to understand, but their parents to understand. And parents don't always speak English. So having just English or having pieces of, fragments of the website just in English would have been elitist and would have excluded the parents of knowing what their children were doing. And it was very important for us to have their parents involved in their education. And the different levels of difficulty were there in the activities, and students knew and parents knew through the coding that we had of each activity. But again, that was the reason guiding our choice of not having the prompts exclusively in some of the prompts exclusively in English, in spite of the level.
It was useful for parents because not all of them could speak English. So
exactly.
It was a sort of guide for them and for their own children, because perhaps they could get access to the webpage by themselves. Mm-hmm.
Now I have another question here from Olivera, and the question is, did you negotiate with your students when you were building the syllabus? And then I'm going to actually combine two questions. I have another similar question from Ludmila, who says, what were the ages of the students? So what were their ages, and were you negotiating these, building these activities as you went along with the students?
Well, our students are about, how old? 21, 20 years old, maybe?
Well, the creators of the activity, you meant the students who created the activities, or the primary school children? Because our students at the university, they can be any age after 18 years old, but mostly the students were around 21 years old, because it was,
yes. And they created the activities for children between 6 and 12 years old. Primary education in Spain covers those ages.
As for the syllabus, due to the COVID pandemic, the syllabus was, we redesigned the syllabus because we covered the contents that were on the syllabus, but we reinvented the way we covered them. So we still kept the essence of the whole course, but giving it a new touch. We made us, reinvent ourselves at the same time. And as the graphs show, the response was amazing. They liked it so much better than traditional methods of learning, didn't they?
Yes, they did. And of course, the context changed because we were not going to the classroom. They were not going to have a face-to-face interaction. We were speaking with them, but we were addressing ourselves to a computer. So that's what she has said. We have to reinvent ourselves, to reinvent the way of accessing and drawing the students' attention. And I think it was very, very good, because at the end they were really very, 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 very motivated, and they were very ready to create activities, to elaborate materials. I mean, even though for them it was work, because at the end of the day, I think it was harder, but they prefer that way.
Thank you so much, Maria and Inés. So our next speaker is Damian Romero. Damian is a doctoral candidate at the University of Arizona. Damian?
Hi, Carmen. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. So I just want to thank the University of Arizona, Searle, and my advisor, Dr. Carmen King, for this opportunity. I will be talking about my experience helping online students cope with confusion, uncertainty, and anxiety through University of Arizona values. I will first give you some context about what was going on at the time at the University of Arizona. This was during the spring semester, and especially after March and everything that came after the close down. Spring break started on March 9th. And at the same time, plane tickets were plummeting, of course. All students wanted to travel at the time. And on March 11th, right in the middle of the spring recess, the US closed borders to foreigners, but also that meant that 6.5% of UAE students who are international students got stranded abroad. And also US students who were who were residents of the United States also sometimes could not get back because they couldn't get a flight and airports were closing down. So it was a very chaotic time. On March 16th, all classes went online right after the spring break happened. And then the semester ended on May 15th, and on May 18th, summer classes started. But it wasn't until the start of June that Tucson, the city of Tucson would start testing, and the University of Arizona started its testing program until the beginning of the fall semester in late August. So this was the situation, and of course the generalized feeling was a lot of chaos. People were trying to understand what was going on, and students were not the exception. I will show you now a couple of emails from minority students in my classes, which I think represent kind of the general sentiment and issues that students were facing at the time. This first one is from a student who was facing family issues. So, dear Profe, I wanted to let you know that my family member is in this hospital. This is her second time in about 2 weeks. I finished all my assignments and I should be fine to do the midterm on Wednesday. So they were dealing with all this stress, you know. And then, however, I have an issue with a class activity yesterday. Since I was with my family, I'll take the points lost. I'll keep you updated if anything changes. So this student was already facing some academic concerns because of what was going on around her. And this other student also had a related problem. So, dear professor, I have not yet submitted my final project proposal. I have a mental health issue and have been struggling to complete my homework for all my classes this semester. I've been feeling worse than normal recently, and so I have not been as good as I usually do about turning in homework on this semester. So it was evident to me that students needed extra deadlines and extra time for the deadlines, and in general, help to understand what was going on inside and around them. And so my general response to both students was something like this. Dear student, always to use the student name, of course. Thanks for reaching out to me. Do not worry. Submit the assignments and I will consider them for full credit. Would you like to have office hours with me on Zoom this week to make a work plan for the rest of the semester as well? We can discuss alternate homework due dates and see how you're doing with your notes, and some personalized message always included. So my perceptions from these and many other such conversations via Zoom and email with my students was that my students were facing feelings of confusion, uncertainty, and anxiety. And my next step was to address these feelings by incorporating several strategies and with the backup of my institutional values. There's evidence that the institutional image is linked to perceived value of the education. Things like being supportive, student and focused, flexible, being a long established institution and traditional, all of them bring certain certainty, feelings of certainty. But however, institutions also represent stability, and this is especially important in a time of crisis. So what are these University of Arizona values, which I actually pointed to them out explicitly in my class? They're integrity, compassion, exploration, adaptation, inclusion, and determination. Now I will talk about how I use these values to create outlets for students to express their feelings and understand what was going on around them. I wanted to help students understand their feelings and make sense of what was going on around them and in the world in general. And I wanted to be there for them through all these changes, all by embodying and enacting, of course, the University of Arizona values. So I did so by including new effective learning outcomes to the course, but I did so implicitly. I didn't want to bring them more learning outcomes that I had to achieve. This was something I was going to be organic through the course of the semester, much like María and Inés did on their Corona Ninjas thing. I wanted to keep the content, but also kind of reinvent the syllabus in their favor, of course. During the rest of the semester, students would value their situations by expressing their emotions and in a contained, of course, and safe environment. They would also build immediacy with me and their peers in a time of isolation. Immediacy is the verbal and nonverbal behaviors that reduce the social and psychological distance between teacher students and people in general. And then also to understand what was going on in the world during the pandemic through their interactions with people from other countries and cultures. This was a language class. I forgot to say, I'm teaching Spanish high-level students. So how I used the University of Arizona values, first I had a determination. I knew I needed to keep my students. I needed to help my students at this difficult time. And I needed to help all of my students, of course. Some would be more affected than others. I set out to find out my students' needs, because that's an essential component of compassion. Understand first what they need, and then you can enact compassion. So I asked myself, which of the classroom activities and dynamics were appropriate for this moment in time and could be adapted to the new learning objectives, and what needed also to be changed. And I implemented the changes. I was always flexible in my mind, and I made a special emphasis on alternate due dates. So what do these outlets to their feelings look like? So first, direct communication with me, conversation with their peers, virtual exchange with native speakers, and discussion forums. Now, these are all things that we already did in the classroom. What I did was to increase my communication with them, of course, through email and our favorite online platform, Zoom. I also co-opted virtual their conversation with peers, virtual exchange with native speakers, and discussion forums on Conversify and D2L Brightspace. Conversify is the online platform. It's a platform where you can video chat with other students, and they're all students from registered universities. And so it's a contained environment. They would not be talking about their personal feelings explicitly there. They would do that with their peers in class and with me, but Conversify helped them understand what was going on in the around the world. They would talk to people in Venezuela, in Argentina, in Mexico, in Spain. And yeah, so, and after that, they would come to class, to Brightspace, and they would then give a summary and then a reflection about what was going on and what they talked to with their peers around the world. So what did the communication with me look like? First, I wanted to build a positive rapport through immediacy. I can show you how it look like how that looks like in a second. Also, I always keep student records from the beginning of the semester. And I also have a resource of a contact form where it's just a Google form where they fill out what their expected outcomes are, and what they want from this, and who they are. So all of those, so I keep those records, and then that helps me personalize emails, for example, from a template. And that makes me the range, because there's a lot of students in a class, and I have so many hands right now, right? And so it's important that I have a template which I can personalize based on that information. And then I put a special emphasis on following up emails and every communication with them. And we always have a first interview in the online classes, in the online program at the University of Arizona, the Spanish online program. And usually this interview is something you do at the end of the semester. I usually do it at the beginning of the semester. And then that gave me the chance to have a second interview right after the pandemic hit. That was very important to me since I really wanted to contact my students at that time. This is a sample email from one of the emails I send every week to my students, just so that they know what is going on. I see I only have 5 minutes left, so I'll continue. So So immediacy behaviors include something like, I really enjoyed talking to you last week. This is after the interview. If you were unable to reach out to me, please email me. Things like that give students who didn't have the chance to communicate then a second chance, right? And that's very important. So also I highlighted students or groups, especially minority students or groups every week. Like, for example, there was somebody who won an award, and then I featured them on my emails. I try to do this every week for a single student or a group of students. So the outlets, so virtual exchange outlets where they would talk to people from across the world. There were no COVID-specific activities at the time in Conversify, so I came up with a set of questions. Things like, how has the situation with the coronavirus affected you? What do you and your partner from across the world, of course, and what do you think about what's the most important challenges at this time as a society and also personally? And what can we do as a society to fight the coronavirus? And so these things were, they talked about these things with their partners, but they also came back to the discussion forums, and they reflected on those issues. And so with questions such as, how has the situation with the coronavirus affected you and your partner? And write at least 3 tips to help us as a society fight the coronavirus. So this incorporates grammar such as suggestions and like subjunctive in Spanish. It was important to keep, track of what they were also learning along the way. So some of the responses are things like, we can create art, the first one, right? Focus on getting virtually together. I found interesting that nobody can go out, right? My partner told me that due to the virus situation, he cannot go to work. So they are experimenting other people's issues through this exchange. And when talking to my partner, I realized that we are in the same situation. The fact that there is no food or toilet paper. There was one student who said, stay home. Many people in the United States are not in places they have locked up yet. And I've noticed that a lot of people keep dating, for instance. So you can see their feelings and how they're understanding the world through these activities. So the takeaways and solutions for me were that our institutions more represent sustainability in times of crisis. Institutional values are a public reference, so there's something you can refer to always. Implicitly or explicitly, we can integrate effective learning outputs in our course. And immediacy behaviors are something that is very important to include in every email, in every contact you have with your students during a time of crisis. Use personal examples, addressing people by name, eye contact, body language if you can't do it through Zoom, for example. And by integrating institutional values into my teaching, I was able to have a clear goal, be inclusive, especially we have to keep in mind minority students, students with attention and learning challenges, and students with disabilities, especially also students who are not doing well will need more attention than usual in this time of a pandemic. And then compassion, we want to listen to student needs, be creative, and be flexible, but also always with integrity. So there's no need to be perfect. I was facing my own situations. I had to change appointments, Zoom appointments with my students 2 or 3 times, and that was okay. But the important thing is to be the pillar that students need. And thank you for your time. I have some resources here for you. I shared my presentation through the app, and here are my references. Again, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. We have about 10 minutes for questions for Damian. I would actually like to start off with a question, Damian. You yourself are a student, and so you talked a lot about your experience as a graduate student who teaches Spanish courses at the university. Would you enlighten us a little bit about graduate students and kind of what was going on behind the scenes with the graduate students themselves? I know you had an interesting situation and how they found support, or did they find support, and what that looked like.
Definitely. Thank you very much for this question, Carmen. I think that graduate students are very familiar with campus resources, and sometimes undergraduate students, it's not the case with undergraduate students. So things like, let me see if I can find it, like CAPS, right? Counseling and Psychological Services, and the Disability Cultural Center, and like everything related to learning and attention challenges. We have this information in the Spanish department, especially because we teach other students, right? We teach undergraduate students. So we're very aware of these resources and that they are open to us as well in the University of Arizona. Many of us are also have graduated from a degree at the University of Arizona, such as, like, for example, I'm a master's alum from the Spanish department, and those institutional values are not new to me. So I know that there's an institution behind me. I know that there's people like you, there's people in the Spanish department who are there for us. And I especially valued my professors reaching out to me, and that was very important. Like in the linguistics department, for example, they had this thing where they all pitch into an email, and they wanted to give us resources and just ask us how they were doing, and that was really something that I used for my own teaching. Yeah, I don't know if that answers all your questions, but for my own personal experience, I was stranded in Paris, and then I got stranded in Argentina, and then I had to come to Mexico, of course, dealing with like personal issues and health-related issues with my some of my family members. So I could really relate to what students were feeling and what was going on. So in the meantime, I wanted to show you some of the COVID situation at the University of Arizona right now is that 4.7% of the population is contagious. So you can see how students would feel in this situation. There are a lot of resources at the University of Arizona right now relating COVID and testing. And so we always have social distancing, of course. Most of the classes are online. And so this gives us an opportunity to work on our online communication, of course. Things like, so for example, this sample email reply, I always reply with their student names and thank you for contacting me, right? Either in the target language or in English. Sometimes students are more comfortable in English, and that's okay. We can talk to them in English, and that's fine for now, of course. And then this is a sample email template that I wanted to show you. So things like, dear student, I wanted to contact you to see how you're doing. I know that, and then you can customize this email according to the student's situation, right? And how do I know their situation? Because I keep a log, like a file with their, what they like, what they need, the communications we have through email. I have this file for just the duration of the semester. Then I get rid of it. I don't need that information hanging around, but so things like, for instance, I have this, I don't know if you can see it, but I have this Google form where I shared it with you, and I will share it with you if you want to contact me through email. But I asked them at the beginning of the semester things like, where are you from? What do you want to be when you graduate? So nothing is perfect, but what do you think are the greatest challenges of your profession, etc. Things like that, so I can get to know them better and help them later if they need to, right? And also approach them in a more personal, deeper level. And my students really appreciate that.
Damian, thank you so much. This is a fascinating presentation and actually a very interesting angle you're looking at online teaching, specifically how do we accommodate students in such a crisis. We have a few questions. I think you already touched upon them, some of them at least in the chat. And one question was about the feedback you received from your students about this approach. If you could maybe talk a little bit more about that. And I also have a question from my own question for you. I was wondering, we were, as a faculty at U of A, we were really caught by surprise with this pandemic in the spring, in March. Well, now we are in the fall semester. Has your approach changed in any way, in the way how you handle your students' needs, now that we are already adjusted it to some extent to this modality, to this teaching modality, to the situation in the world? If you could comment about that, that would be very interesting, I think, to hear.
Definitely, thank you. So the response of my students was really great. I had students who even said to me that they had never had an approach like that to a professor before. They were not the kind of students that would do such a thing as to like message their professor. They were more shy, let's say. And some of them didn't think they were going to make it. And they, after the semester, they wanted to reach out and say how this had been, as intended, a pillar for them, and they didn't get lost in like all the chaos because they had, they had their activities due, and if they couldn't make the due date, then it was okay because the due dates were extended. I want to emphasize that this is not a thing that we usually do in the Spanish program in general. Because we do have a lot of teachers and graduate students teaching, and teachers in general, and it's hard to manage a program where like there's no set deadlines, and it's something I would do. But at the time of crisis, this really helped my students, and I was really glad to be able to do for them. Now, regarding my approach, I'm not teaching right now. I'm part of the University of Libraries Research Data Repository team. I'm not teaching this semester, but I did teach throughout the summer. And I saw that the dust was settling down a bit. Students were now used to the online teaching across, all their classes. And I did change my approach because since the beginning of the semester, what I did was to include the University of Arizona values from the start, and also the affected learning outcomes. That was very important. And I did not, so I continued to have a strict due date policy, but when they needed to, I was flexible for them. Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you so much, Damian. Thank you everyone for the questions. Our final panelist is Nolvia Cortez Roman. She is a full-time professor at the Department of Foreign Languages and Graduate Program in Humanities at the Universidad de Sonora, Mexico. Her research interests include language and migration, discourse analysis, language learning and identity. She has an MA in bilingual multicultural education and a PhD in second language acquisition and teaching from the University of Arizona. So Nolvia, welcome to the panel.
Okay, well, the title of my talk is called COVID-19. We are all in this together, but not in the same way. And what I'll be doing is I'll be offering you a panoramic view of online education at a Mexican university. So the objective of my talk is to describe our online educational landscape during the COVID outbreak from both sides of the screen, from the teachers' perspectives, from the students' perspectives. And this would include access to internet, computers, training and classroom culture, and the effects on the learning outcomes. The talk is organized in the following way. I'll be providing a little bit of a context to you about the University of Sonora, as well as our COVID dates and the changes we had to make. And I'll also be intertwining the pandemic relevant research that has recently come out with our changing reality, and finally, the lessons learned. So to provide you a little bit of context, we are a BA program, an undergraduate program in English language teaching at a Mexican public university in Sonora. Sonora is the state that borders with Arizona. Hermosillo in particular is about 260 kilometers from the Arizona border. So we're about a 3-hour drive away. On March 13th, like the rest of you, we received a governor's message on the lockdown and that K-9 to schools would be temporarily shut down until further notice. As autonomous institutions, high schools and higher education would have to analyze lockdown feasibility and dates. But that afternoon, on March 13th, our university president announced that classes would be canceled and personnel with infectious predispositions such as age and pre-existing health conditions, as well as parents with school-aged children, either the mother or the father, would not be returning until further notice. The rest of the personnel would be returning. 4 days later, on March 17th, we got a memo from the university to all professors where they declared that face-to-face classes were no longer an option, and we had to contact our students in any way possible to set up online courses. And I quote, "Use any platform at your reach and continue with the semester." Like the rest of the world, we were caught off guard. Pressing issues such as access to internet and computers, training, and previous experience with online educational platforms were assumed as predetermined conditions with our student and faculty. However, unlike other countries where this may be a reality, our pre-existing conditions were actually quite different. So just for you to get an idea, I'll be talking a little bit about the technological landscape in Sonora. Sonora's technological landscape is actually quite notable in Mexico, as it has the highest internet connection level at the national level. And Hermosillo in particular is the city with the highest internet use in the country, according to the National Statistics Institution. So as you can see, in Sonora, we have an 81.4% of household access to technology versus a 52.9% at the national level. A 79.1% of a population over 6 years uses internet versus a 65.8% at a national level. And 95.6% of our population in Sonora use internet on the smartphone versus an 82.3% that use internet on the smartphone. That said, we can assume that the majority of Sonorans have access to internet and computers. And so therefore, we can also assume that our population of young college students and highly educated professors would also have access. So in theory, continuing with the semester in an online format should have been relatively easy, but was it? And I'm going to show you. What we did is at the BA in English language teaching program, we informally surveyed our students in a Facebook group. 301 of the students, there's a total of 301 students, but only 82 responded. And of these 82, 100% said they had access to internet, either at home, at work, with the neighbors, or on their smartphone. But despite the fact that they had access, it wasn't necessarily of the best quality. They complained that they couldn't turn on the cameras because then their internet went down, or they just had one laptop for them and their siblings. So sometimes they couldn't connect to class because the other sibling was in class. And so smartphones were regularly used, and these were even used for reading long texts as well as writing out essays. So it was a harder, obviously a smartphone isn't the best device for actually writing out complete text. All our professors, they were also asked, at least through emails, what their situation was with regards to online access and computers. And they all claimed that they had access to internet and computers. However, some professors claimed their computers could only handle a few open programs at the same time, and broadband quality was inconsistent. and sometimes it forced them to look for alternatives not provided by the institution. So this is a picture that you see here that came out on Facebook with some professors from the University of Sonora. In this case, this is not a professor from the BA program in English language teaching, but this is a professor from law school who had to drive to his daughter's house. And because of the lockdown, he didn't actually go into the house, but there was enough Wi-Fi for him to actually be able to access and to turn on his computer and give class in his car, because the internet connection was better at his daughter's house than at his home. So another issue that they also mentioned was that video and adequate microphones were problematic for both students and teachers, as many computers did not have working cameras or microphones, and oftentimes broadband capacity was too weak to support video calls. So such conditions are definitely not ideal for learning to take place, as according to Garcia and Wise, research regarding online learning and teaching shows that they are effective only if students have consistent access to the internet and computers, and if teachers have received targeted training and supports for online instruction. Because these needed requirements for effectiveness, they have been largely absent for our students and for our faculty. And so then remote education during the pandemic has impeded adequate teaching and learning in our context in particular. So, however, perhaps the biggest challenge was training and support for online instructions and the students' comfort level with it. So currently, the university employs 2,000 faculty members for teaching in the actual classroom. Online courses are rare, with one online graduate program and one online undergraduate program in the university. Even though the different programs had been encouraged to incorporate more online courses previously to the lockdown, it was still a distant reality, as training was still very limited to very few professors. For example, in 2018, 3 courses were offered. One of them was actually offered by Carmen King, and the enrollment was limited to about 100 professors in the 3 courses. In our program's case, 4 professors attended these courses, and 1, myself, I would say, did not actually complete the course. So consistent with Herrera Batista's findings, as cited in King and Ramirez, they noted that many Mexican higher education institutions have focused on acquiring computers and making dedicated lab spaces for these, yet there's a lack of institutional policies regarding the strategic widespread institutional use of these devices, including the use of educational platforms and online conferencing platforms. However, as a program, we have been using Moodle for more than 15 years now. Its purpose has been to organize resources, assign tasks, and grade homework. In other words, it's complementary to our classroom activities. We can sign in, and our students know that they must log in regularly to check on classroom updates. Up until the lockdown, our training had been very hands-on, basically playing around with the platform, but limited to posting and assignments. So this is a post of my Moodle page in particular, where I organize the course by weeks. And what I do is I basically post the resources and the activities. So in a nutshell, our experience with online educational platforms was for organizational purposes, and the rest of the teaching was in the classroom, formats that we are generally very comfortable with. But what is important to mention is the classroom culture. In our institutions, like in many others in the country, our classroom culture is still focused on a very traditional format where students engage in face-to-face interaction with classroom times ranging from 3 to 10 hours a day, with an average of 5 hours weekly. So we see a lot of each other. Our students' academic culture consists of very structured learning situations with precise objectives, detailed assignments, and strict timetables. Teachers provide the answers and students are receptors. Professors lecture, provide, and direct the classroom activities, and students participate with direction from the professor. There's a high uncertainty and avoidance. Additionally, there is also a high esteem for face-to-face interaction and amicable relationships among students and with the professors. Our college students construct tightly knit groups. Unlike the US, they are cohorts of students that share the same schedule and courses, very similar to K-6 education in the United States. They share the same classroom and schedules for 7 to 8 hours a day. And it is the professor who comes into the classroom to teach the course while they're there the whole day. The students are there the whole day. So their learning is very interpersonal, as much of the emotional support during their college years comes from their classmates who are with them for at least 4 years, 35 to 40 hours a week. Online courses changed classroom culture and socialization patterns that they were used to. Ideally, a good online learner should be able to work independently and have strong management skills. And our students were definitely not trained in these habits. Online learning obliged students to work on their own with courses that were simply transferred to an online format. And worse yet, the best part, that of socialization and creating bonds with classmates and their professors, was no longer possible through this modality. Darby provides insights into this often overlooked aspect on the relationship between emotions and learning, and explains how emotions are powerfully interconnected with cognitive processes such as attention, motivation, and memory. Many professors, myself included, opted for posting resources and assigning tasks on Moodle, providing written feedback and engaging with students only online when it was needed. This left little space for further interaction, creating barriers to online student success because of the difficulty of creating social and emotional connections with and between them. So the transition to the online format was permeated with many obstacles, many that are shared with the rest of the world, but definitely exacerbated in our particular context. Both students and professors had consistent problems with internet connection due to the poor quality of broadband width. Se cayó el internet, or the internet went down, was heard once and again on behalf of professors and students. Students and professors did not all have good quality PCs or laptops with basic accessories such as cameras and microphones, often recurring to smartphones as options. Oftentimes, the laptops or computers had to be shared with the other household members, making it difficult to use the device when needed. Professors' training in online courses was extremely limited, so when transitioning to an online version, we had little training on how to do so. Like many other professors, my transition meant moving my previously established syllabus to the platform with very few modifications. In my lack of training, I assumed that students would read, understand on their own, and complete the task. Big mistake. The university started to provide online courses for online teaching several weeks into the lockdown, but we had already started teaching, so of course the courses were fraught with errors. Finally, classroom culture and students resistant to online courses. Carmen King in 2020 published an article where she compared Mexican and US students' experiences and attitudes to an online course they shared, a COIL course. The findings were strikingly different. Where US students had mostly favorable evaluations to the shared online courses, the Mexican students expressed the contrary. Mexican students expressed the course did not meet academic criteria and rigor, lack of organization, and the content was boring. Some even took issue with the US professors' teaching style. Such findings support that our students' academic culture consists of very structured learning situations with precise objectives, detailed assignments, strict timelines. They avoid uncertainty at all costs. So teachers provide the answers, they're receptors. There's very little space for independent decision-making and reflection, characteristics that are deemed as favorable for online learning. So what are the lessons learned? 7 months later, after having been trained in a 20-hour course on the use of online conference platform and further training with Moodle, there is still a need for further training on the development of online courses. We may be further trained on the technical side on how to use Moodle and Teams, but there is still a need to learn how to teach online effectively. Our classroom culture needs us to incorporate a space for professors to continue supporting our students emotionally, and Damian's ideas were just ideal now, and ways for students to provide support amongst themselves. Our online courses should ideally provide opportunities for students to interact not only for learning purposes, but for socialization purposes and friendship building, a dire need for our students in particular. Professors should also incorporate more independent learning strategies and critical thinking skills in our teaching, not only for more success on online courses, but for lifelong learning. Our students in particular are used to being accompanied closely by the professor, and many professors are convinced that this is their responsibility. A constant note to myself is, let my students learn and think on their own. but teach them how to first. So we can never assume that internet and computer access with the required devices is a given in developing countries. In fact, as Garcia and Weiss state, one of the most critical opportunity gaps is the uneven access to the devices and internet access critical to learning online. So this too is one more factor that will contribute to the disparities between developing and developed nations. Just today, a news report came out in today's paper that states that 10% of the student population at a university dropped out because of the lack of competence. We're talking about 3,000 or 30,000 students that dropped out because of this, because of the lack of internet and computers. However, resilience has been key in our experiences. Both professors and students have worked hard despite the challenges, just like the rest of the world. Making use of the collective labor contract, the professors' union at our university called for further analysis of the current working conditions and deemed such conditions as contract violations. In theory, this was a fact. We were definitely not hired to work under such conditions. Yet, despite such a reality, the majority of the professors worked as best as they could under these conditions. So this is, these are some of the references that I'm referring to. And well, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Nolvia. Really appreciate it. And we can go ahead and start to take questions. Oh, all right. Actually, we have one comment from Oliveira. It says, I would not generalize about the internet access. I live in New York City and my students here have more issues with internet access than students from less developed countries. I find it interesting, Nolvia. There's so much that you presented. It was really packed with really interesting information. Now, I know that you said that there is a sindicato, and I'm sorry, the word in English has escaped me at the very moment.
Union.
Thank you.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that's not the case in all countries. And how about the professors, my understanding is, have really come out and complained that what would be the alternative? Or can you tell me a little bit about those negotiations that are going on with the union and the university?
Well, you know, the interesting thing there, when that union statement came out, it was announced by the general secretary from the union, and it had been a discussion that had been going on among what they call the delegates there, and the delegates are basically representatives for each of the professors in the different departments. So it was a conversation that took place for I think it was a group of 40 people, and they came out with this statement. But that wasn't necessarily appreciated by all the professors in general, because I think there was a larger understanding amongst the majority of the professors that this was definitely a situation that you had to work with. And what was important in this case was to continue with the semester and support their students in their learning process. I mean, despite the lack of resources and despite the lack of our training.